Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Recha Kodesh. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. Today we're going to go into the book of Esther, the 6th chapter, and we're pretty much at the point where Esther, the Lord put the spirit upon Xerxes for Esther to find favor in his sight. Therefore, she wasn't put to death. As we went through in the 5th chapter. And so what we're going to read through in the 6th chapter here is in between that day, right? So after Esther had already had the first banquet, and she invited the king, right, Xerxes or Ahasuerus, and Haman to the second banquet, right? Remember, Haman went home and discussed with his wife and his friends how to get rid of Mordecai, and the idea of building or setting up a gallows that they can hang Mordecai on is what they settled on. So keep that in mind, that this is what has happened so far. Anyway, it says the king plans to honor Mordecai. Esther 6:1. On that night could not the king sleep, and he commanded to bring the book of records of the Chronicles, and they were read before the king. So just like we have Chronicles, like when you read, you have the book of Kings, you have the book of Chronicles, and these are records of things, events, important things that have taken place, right? Mainly pertaining to the king and so on. So they were read before the king, and it was found that Mordecai had told of Bigthana and Teresh, two of the king's chamberlains, the keepers of the door, who sought to lay hand on King Ahasuerus. And I believe in the very beginning, right, when we went through the first chapter, starting with the editions of Esther, I think chapter 10, Mordecai had that vision, right, and he ended up investigating the matter between these two guards, and found out that indeed they were plotting to take out or harm the king. And so he reported it, and it was recorded that he basically saved the king's life. So interestingly enough, the Lord put the spirit upon Xerxes or Ahasuerus at this point to where he couldn't sleep this night, and he requested that they read these chronicles. And then it just so happened that right here and there, right, the remembrance of what Mordecai had done came up. And we'll see how the Lord set this all up beautifully, especially at this time. So verse 3, and the king said, what honor and dignity hath been done of Mordecai, or done to Mordecai for this? Then said the king's servants that ministered unto him, there is nothing done for him. So he wasn't rewarded for this. And the king said, who is in the court? So at this point, as this was happening, they were reading this, the king asked this question. Haman made his way over there, right? So upon seeing or hearing it, the king asked, right, who is that? Who's over there? Now Haman was come into the outward court of the king's house to speak unto the king to hang Mordecai on the gallows that he had prepared for him. And the king's servants said unto him, behold, Haman standeth in the court. And the king said, let him come in. So now you're going to see how the Lord, how the Lord plays chess, right? Verse 6, so Haman came in, and the king said unto him, what shall be done unto the man whom the king delighteth to honor? Now Haman thought in his heart, to whom would the king delight to honor more than to myself? So at this point, the Lord set it up to where the timing is very crucial here, right? First, the king couldn't sleep. And so he asked for them to read the Chronicles to him. Now he could have asked for anything, right? But in this case, he wanted them to read the records. So they read it. And of all the readings, they read the part about Mordecai having basically saved the king's life. And at this very point in time is when Haman comes in to try and make his request to hang Mordecai. But before he's even able to do that, the king is already asking him this question. So that point is very crucial right there, because had the king not requested for the Chronicles to be read, had Mordecai's life-saving feats not have been read here, all it would have taken was for Haman to come and make his request. The king wouldn't have asked him this question. Haman would have probably came and asked his question first about, or made his request about hanging Mordecai, phrased it in a slick way, and then that would have been it for Mordecai, right? But the Lord set it up in a way where, you can't harm those that the Lord has his hand over, right? The scriptures say, when the man's ways please the Lord, he maketh even his enemies to be at peace with him. So here in this case, guess what? Mordecai didn't even know that this is what was being plotted against him. And all behind the scenes, the Lord took care of it. Okay. So this is why it's very important to put your faith and your trust in the Lord, because this is why the scriptures say you don't trust in man. Man can't do this for you. Anyway, so now Haman, before he gets to make his request, because he's basically coming to make a death request for Mordecai, right? But before he's able to do that, the king is already like, boom, yo, I got a question for you, right? And then let's read that on here. Verse 6, and read it again. So Haman came in, and the king said unto him, what shall be done unto the man whom the king delighteth to honor? And once again, see how the Lord set it up. He didn't have Xerxes, he didn't have, it's interchangeable, it's the same person, right? But he didn't have Ahasuerus mention Mordecai's name, right? He just asked it more in a general sense, like the man whom the king delighteth to honor, what should be done for him? And right then and there, that already, then and Haman, his proud ass mind is like, well, with the position I'm in, I was already invited to Esther's banquet. Like, I'm the king's right-hand man. Who else would the king want to honor more than me? So right then and there, he's rattling off the best things that he would want. So verse 7, it says, and Haman answered the king, for the man whom the king delighteth to honor, let the royal apparel be brought, which the king useth to wear, and the horse that the king rideth upon, and the crown royal, which is set upon his head. And let this apparel and horse be delivered to the hand of one of the king's most noble princes. So get all these things and give it to one of your top guys, that they may array the man withal, whom the king delighteth to honor. So Haman is imagining himself in this role, right? And that's why he's giving such detail here, and he's imagining one of the top guys arraying him in this, and his proud ass is being paraded, and everybody is seeing like, yeah, he's the man. So it says here, whom the king delighteth to honor, and bring him on horseback through the street of the city, and proclaim before him, thus shall it be done to the man whom the king delighteth to honor. So let everybody know, this is what happens to the one that the king delights to honor. Verse 10, then the king said unto Haman, make haste, and take the apparel and the horse, as thou hast said, and do even so to Mordecai the Jew. Oh my God. What? So this guy came in there with high hopes. He's all excited. Before he could even open his mouth to make his request, the king already gave him a task. So the Lord just completely just knocked all that out of Haman's hands. Basically just knocked the ball out of his hand. It says here, the Jew that sitteth at the king's gate, let nothing fail of all that thou hast spoken. So now, not only is this honor going to Mordecai, which Haman detests, but Haman is the one who has to do it. See how the Lord works? There is no beating the Lord. You don't make an enemy out of the Lord's chosen, right? The Lord's people, those that the Lord loves, and then think you're gonna be all good. You can never win against the Lord. And that's why when you're on the side of the Lord, and as the scriptures say, when your ways please the Lord, you're really in the best position. And Mordecai didn't do anything here. right? In this sense, right? He didn't come and talk to the king. He didn't come and do. At this point in time, he's worried about, not having him and his people exterminated. But behind the scenes, these are all the things the Lord is doing, right, for him. And likewise, us that are servants of the Lord, there are a lot of things that go on behind the scenes that end up in our favor. Matter of fact, hold on, let me pause here and jump real quick to the book of Romans, chapter 8, verse, I believe it's 28. Yep. And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to whom are the called according to his purpose. See? So this is an example of that. Because there are things that the Lord is making happening that you may not even know about. And then you find out later on, oh, the Lord blessed you with X, Y, and Z. But if you were privy to how detailed, how intricate the steps that were taken to get you to that point were, you'd be even that much more grateful. And this is just one of the many blessings that comes with serving the one true living power. So verse 12, it says, and Mordecai came again to the king's gate. So after this was done, right, Mordecai returned back to the king's gate. It says, but Haman hasted to his house mourning and having his head covered. So he was stressed. Verse 13, and Haman told Zeresh, his wife, which now I'm curious to see, what does her name mean? Oh, interesting. Made some updates on here. Okay. So it says here, Zarash, gold, wife of Haman the Agagite. Okay, nothing too much else in here. Interesting. Okay. Not entirely sure how accurate that is, but anyway, the point is, it says here, he told his wife Zeresh and all his friends everything that had befallen him. Then his wise men and Zeresh his wife, then said his wise men and Zeresh his wife unto him, if Mordecai be of the seed of the Jews, before whom thou hast begun to fall, thou shalt not prevail against him, but shalt surely fall before him. So they knew something, and that's why they were called the wise men there, because they knew, like, all right, based on these guys, the things that have happened, their history, their records, you don't want to make an enemy out of them, because there's some some higher power back there that's working with them. And it's similar how Pontius Pilate's wife, right, also told him concerning Yahushua, about how she suffered many things in a dream because of him. So basically, you don't want to mess with these people. And as they told him, yeah, if that, he's a Jew, and you already started to fall against him, you're done. You're cooked. You're not gonna win. And you can imagine Haman was pretty pissed off to even hear that, right? Anyway, verse 14, and while they were yet talking with him, came the king's chamberlains and hasted to bring Haman onto the banquet that Esther had prepared. So, and this is just a extrapolation here, right? But based on how the events went, it could be right that night the king couldn't sleep, so he had the records read to him. As they were reading that, Haman makes his way over there, and and basically meets with the king. The king asks him about these things, and then makes the request. And then Haman has that happen the next day, because this was happening in the nighttime. So he has it happen the next day, where Mordecai is honored, and then so on and so forth. And then Haman goes home, and then as he's home that day, this is what happens, right? As he's talking to his wife about this is what happened to him. Then they call him to the banquet, because the banquet was the next day, right? That could be one possibility. Another one could have been that maybe when Haman came to the court, right, as it says here in verse 4, and the king said, who is in the court? Maybe this could have been actually the next day, right, that this happened. So that night, the king couldn't sleep. They read this to him. Then the next day, Haman came to make his request, but then, he was met with a different request, and then he had to do that. Okay, long story short, there was this banquet here was set for the following day. Okay, so this brings us to the book of Esther, the 6th chapter. Interesting stuff so far. So we'll see how the Lord flips the script here and fulfills that vision that he showed to Mordecai back in the editions of Esther. I believe it was the 10th chapter, in that first vision that Mordecai received. Anyway, with that, Lord willing, this was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Bracha, Kodash. Until next time, Shalom.